Modern anti-submarine warfare is built on one assumption: that the hunter always knows how many targets are in the water. Every sonar barrier, every patrol pattern, every sonobuoy field is designed around a single number: the number of hostile submarines believed to be at sea. Get that number wrong, and the entire defense collapses. In early March 2026, the United States Navy got that number wrong by 5. February 27, 2026, 4:12 local time. Bandar Abbas Naval Base, Iran. Satellite imagery from a KH-11 reconnaissance pass showed something unusual. The submarine pens at Iran's primary naval installation were emptying. Over the previous 72 hours, the number of submarines visible at their berths had dropped from 11 to 3. Standard maintenance rotations account for 2 or 3 boats at sea at any given time. Not 8. Not in a single week. The imagery was flagged by analysts at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and forwarded to the Office of Naval Intelligence within 6 hours. The assessment was cautious: possible fleet exercise, possible dispersal drill. Nothing in Iranian naval communications, intercepted by NSA listening posts at Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, indicated a combat alert. That assessment would turn out to be catastrophically incomplete. I'm your host at Navy Battlefront, where we break down the most critical naval operations shaping global power. Today, we are reconstructing what multiple sources describe as the most significant ASW failure in CENTCOM's operational history. A 96-hour submarine hunt across some of the most acoustically hostile waters on the planet. A hunt that exposed a gap in American naval dominance that no one in the Pentagon wants to talk about publicly. To understand how Iran pulled this off, you need to understand what they had in the water. Iran's submarine fleet is not large by global standards. It is not technologically advanced compared to American or Russian boats, but it is purpose-built for one mission: denying access to the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. And in that specific mission, in those specific waters, it is far more dangerous than its specifications suggest. The backbone of Iran's undersea force is the Fateh-class coastal submarine. Displacing roughly 593 tons submerged, the Fateh is a diesel-electric boat with an estimated operational depth of 200 meters and a range of approximately 500 nautical miles at cruising speed. It carries 4 torpedo tubes capable of firing heavyweight torpedoes or deploying naval mines. The Fateh is not quiet by open ocean standards. A Virginia-class attack submarine would detect it at significant range in deep, clear Atlantic water. The Persian Gulf is not the Atlantic. The second component is the Ghadar-class midget submarine. At roughly 120 tons submerged, the Ghadar is barely larger than a fishing trawler. It carries 2 torpedoes. Its crew consists of fewer than 20 personnel. Its maximum speed submerged is approximately 11 knots. On paper, it is a relic, a design philosophy borrowed from North Korean Yono-class boats, themselves derived from Cold War-era Yugoslav midget submarines. On paper means nothing in 30 meters of water with a mud bottom and a surface temperature of 28 degrees Celsius. Because in the shallow, warm, acoustically chaotic environment of the Persian Gulf, the Ghadar's greatest weakness becomes its greatest strength. It is small. It is slow. It draws almost no power when sitting on the bottom with engines off. And when it goes silent, it effectively disappears. The U.S. Navy knew this. Every ASW exercise in Fifth Fleet's area of operations acknowledged the literal submarine threat. The problem was never awareness. The problem was capacity. And on February 27, 2026, the problem became acute. Naval Intelligence assessed that Iran had 6 to 8 submarines at sea. Standard dispersal. Elevated, but not unprecedented. The assessment was based on 3 inputs: satellite imagery showing empty berths, SIGINT intercepts of Iranian Navy communications referencing routine patrol assignments, and acoustic data from a Virginia-class attack submarine, hull number classified, running a passive sonar barrier in the Gulf of Oman, east of the Strait of Hormuz. The Virginia-class boat had detected and was tracking 3 Iranian submarines transiting outbound through the strait. 2 were assessed as Fateh-class based on their acoustic signatures, a distinctive low-frequency tonality from their diesel generators matched against the ONI's acoustic intelligence database. The 3rd was smaller, probably a Ghadir. The tracks were consistent with a standard Iranian naval exercise. Here is where the first failure occurred. The Virginia-class was positioned to monitor outbound traffic from the Strait of Hormuz. Standard procedure. Submarines leaving Bandar Abbas transit the strait before dispersing into patrol areas. The assumption built into the patrol plan was that all Iranian submarines would exit through this choke point, and they would be counted and catalogued as they passed. That assumption ignored an intelligence report filed 7 months earlier by a DIA analyst at CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa. The report noted that Iran had been conducting infrastructure improvements at Jask, a secondary naval facility on the Gulf of Oman coast east of the strait. The improvements included what appeared to be a covered submarine maintenance facility. The analyst assessed that Jask could serve as an alternative sortie point for Ghadir-class boats, allowing them to deploy into the Gulf of Oman without transiting the strait at all. The report was filed. It was categorized. It was not incorporated into the February patrol plan. 3 Ghadir submarines deployed from Jask between February 24th and February 26th. They were never detected leaving port. They entered the Gulf of Oman submerged, running on battery power at 4 knots, and they dispersed southward toward the shipping lanes without ever crossing the Virginia-class sonar barrier. March 1st, 2026. The picture began to sharpen. P-8, a Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft operating out of Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, had been running systematic sonobuoy patterns across the central Persian Gulf. Over 48 hours, they had deployed more than 300 AN/SSQ-53 DIFAR passive sonobuoys in a grid pattern, stretching from the coast of Bahrain to the waters south of Iran's Larak Island. The sonobuoy data was processed aboard the P-8A and transmitted via Link 16 to the Combined Maritime Forces headquarters in Bahrain. Acoustic analysts identified 6 submarine contacts, 3 in the central Gulf, moving slowly on diesel-electric power, 2 in the approaches to the strait, where the Virginia-class had already been tracking them, and 1, a new contact, in the shallow water northeast of Bahrain, less than 90 nautical miles from the U.S. 5th Fleet headquarters in Manama. That last contact changed the threat assessment instantly. A submarine operating northeast of Bahrain was not conducting a patrol exercise. It was positioning. The water depth in that area averages 35 to 50 meters. The bottom is soft sediment. The acoustic environment is dominated by noise from oil platforms, tanker traffic, and biological sources. Snapping shrimp alone can generate ambient noise levels exceeding 80 decibels in certain frequency bands. Finding a quiet diesel submarine in those conditions is like trying to hear a whisper in a factory. But this boat made a mistake. At 11:47 local time on March 1st, it briefly ran its diesel engine, likely to charge batteries. The acoustic signature lasted less than 4 minutes. That was enough. A P-8A sonobuoy caught the transient and localized the contact to within 2,000 yards. By the end of March 1st, the U.S. Navy's picture looked like this: 9 Iranian submarines detected and tracked, 6 in the Persian Gulf proper, 3 in the Gulf of Oman and Strait approaches. The assessment at 5th Fleet headquarters was that this represented the entirety of Iran's deployed submarine force, with the remaining boats still in port for maintenance. Then the code breakers at NSA caught up with Iran's communications. March 3rd, 2026, 9:20 Zulu time. Fort Meade, Maryland. An NSA cryptanalysis team working Iranian naval traffic broke a burst transmission that had been intercepted 72 hours earlier. The transmission originated from Iran Naval Command at Bandar Abbas and was addressed to multiple fleet subordinate commands. The encryption was military-grade. Iran uses a modified AES-256 variant for its naval command circuits, and the delay in decryption was not unusual for high-priority Iranian traffic. The content of the message was unusual. It was a fleet disposition report, a comprehensive summary of all Iran submarine positions as of February 28th, and it listed 14 boats at sea. Not 9, not 8, 14. The report was transmitted to ONY within the hour. Cross-referenced against the 9 tracked contacts, the math was simple and alarming. 5 Iranian submarines were in the water, somewhere in the Persian Gulf or Gulf of Oman, and the United States Navy had no idea where they were. The intelligence gap triggered an immediate OPREP-3 Pinnacle report, the highest priority operational reporting category in the U.S. military. A SUBLANT flash message went to every ASW command in theater. And at CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa, the implications hit like a shockwave. 2 carrier strike groups were scheduled to transit the Strait of Hormuz within the coming week. The USS Harry S. Truman, operating in the Arabian Sea, was slated to enter the Gulf for a scheduled rotation. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower strike group was preparing to transit outbound for redeployment to the Mediterranean. Both transits required passage through the strait, a choke point barely 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest navigable channel, flanked by Iranian-controlled islands, in water as shallow as 70 meters in places. Pushing a carrier through the strait with 5 unlocated hostile submarines in the area was not a risk any flag officer was willing to accept. Both transits were halted within hours of the intelligence assessment arriving at CENTCOM. That decision alone, halting 2 carrier movements, had strategic implications that rippled outward immediately. The Eisenhower's delay meant gaps in Mediterranean coverage. The Truman's pause left Fifth Fleet temporarily below its mandated carrier presence in the Gulf. Every hour those boats remained missing, Iran was achieving a strategic effect without firing a single weapon. Comment phantom if you think Iran planned this specifically to stall carrier movements. The evidence suggests they did. March 3, 2026, 1400 local time. Fifth Fleet Headquarters, Manama, Bahrain. Vice Admiral Catherine Rhodes, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, convened an emergency ASW coordination conference. Every maritime patrol squadron, every surface combatant with towed array sonar, every helicopter detachment with dipping sonar, and the Virginia-class boats in theater were brought into a single operational picture. The question was not whether to find the missing submarines. The question was where to look. The Persian Gulf is approximately 600 nautical miles long and varies from 200 miles wide in its broadest section to 21 miles at the Strait of Hormuz. Its average depth is only 50 meters. In the southern reaches near the UAE, depths drop to less than 30 meters over vast areas of flat, sandy bottom. The northern Iranian coast has slightly deeper water, but is flanked by extensive shallow shelves. For an ASW force designed to hunt submarines in the deep ocean, the Gulf is a nightmare. Passive sonar, the primary tool of American submarine hunting, relies on detecting sound propagating through the water column. In deep ocean, sound travels in predictable paths governed by temperature gradients and pressure. Convergence zones, deep sound channels, and bottom bounce paths give a skilled sonar operator the ability to detect a submarine at ranges exceeding 50 nautical miles. In the Persian Gulf, none of that applies. The water is too shallow for convergence zones. The temperature profile is nearly isothermal in many areas during winter, eliminating the thermoclines that create predictable sound channels. and the ambient noise level is extraordinarily high. Oil and gas infrastructure, hundreds of platforms, thousands of miles of pipeline, generates constant low-frequency noise. Commercial shipping through the busiest maritime choke point on Earth adds a wall of propeller cavitation and engine harmonics. Even marine life contributes, with biological noise sources that can mask submarine frequencies with disturbing effectiveness. The acoustic environment of the Persian Gulf has a technical designation among ASW professionals. They call it the bathtub: warm, shallow, noisy, everything bouncing off everything. It is the single worst acoustic environment in any strategically significant body of water on Earth, and Iran had put 5 submarines into it that the U.S. Navy could not find. Admiral Rhodes ordered a 3-phase search plan. Phase 1. Reposition the 2 P-8A squadrons from wide-area surveillance to concentrated prosecution patterns focused on 3 priority zones. Zone Alpha, the approaches to the Strait of Hormuz. Zone Bravo, the waters around Abu Musa and the Tunb Islands, Iranian-controlled territories in the Central Gulf. Zone Charlie, the shallow littoral waters along the UAE coast, where an undetected submarine could threaten both naval facilities and oil export terminals. Phase 2. Deploy MH-60R Seahawk helicopters from every surface combatant in theater for active dipping sonar operations. Active sonar, sending a pulse and listening for the return echo, was the only reliable detection method in waters this shallow. The trade-off was that active sonar announces the hunter's presence. Every ping tells the submarine exactly where the helicopter is. In a contested environment, that makes the helicopter a target for shoulder-launched missiles from Iranian fast attack boats operating nearby. Phase 3. The Virginia-class submarine in the Gulf of Oman was ordered to reposition into the strait itself, running ultra-quiet at 3 knots with its TB-29A towed array deployed, creating a passive acoustic tripwire. If any of the missing boats tried to transit the strait, the Virginia would hear them. Probably. In the TB-29A's defense, it is an extraordinary piece of engineering. A thin-line towed array over 1,000 feet long, containing hundreds of hydrophones, it can detect the faintest acoustic anomalies at ranges far exceeding hull-mounted sonar. In deep water, it has tracked diesel submarines at ranges exceeding 30 nautical miles. In the Strait of Hormuz, with a dozen supertankers overhead and tidal currents running at 3 knots, its effective detection range dropped to something closer to 3 miles, maybe less. The operators knew this. They ran the barrier anyway, because 3 miles of detection was better than 0. The first 24 hours of the search produced nothing. 300 sonobuoys deployed, 12 helicopter sorties with active dipping sonar, 2 P-8A Poseidons running continuous racetrack patterns at 500 feet altitude, and not one new submarine contact. The 9 previously tracked Iranian boats were still being monitored. They had not moved significantly. They appeared to be in standard patrol positions, but the 5 missing boats had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. On the morning of March 4th, an analyst at the Joint Intelligence Center in Bahrain presented a hypothesis that would prove to be nearly correct and would make several senior officers deeply uncomfortable. What if the submarines were not moving at all? A diesel-electric submarine on the bottom, with its engines off, its crew at minimal stations, generates almost no acoustic signature. The residual noise from battery maintenance systems, life support, and minor hull creaking might be detectable at ranges of a few hundred yards in ideal conditions. In the acoustic chaos of the Persian Gulf, it would be undetectable at any practical range by passive sonar. Active sonar could find a bottomed submarine. A strong sonar pulse reflected off a submarine hull produces a distinctive echo. But active sonar in shallow water produces hundreds of false echoes from rocky outcroppings, from wrecks, from pipeline infrastructure, from the bottom itself. Every return has to be classified manually by a trained operator. At search speeds, a helicopter with dipping sonar could cover perhaps 2 square nautical miles per hour. The search area encompassed over 40,000 square nautical miles. The math was impossible. Finding 5 stationary submarines on the bottom of the Persian Gulf with active sonar was going to take longer than Iran needed to sit there. And this led to the question that nobody in the briefing room wanted to ask, but everyone was thinking. How long could they stay down there? A Fateh-class submarine operating on battery power alone, at minimal electrical load, can sustain a bottomed position for an estimated 72 to 96 hours. A Ghadir, with its smaller crew and lower power requirements, may extend that to 120 hours or more. Iranian submarine crews train specifically for extended bottomed operations. According to intelligence assessments from previous years, Iran submarine personnel are selected partly for psychological tolerance of confined conditions. They drill silence protocols extensively. 5 submarines, each sitting silently on the Gulf floor, each carrying torpedoes, each positioned within striking range of the most critical shipping lanes in the global economy, each invisible. Iran was not just hiding submarines. Iran was demonstrating a capability. The capability to deny the United States Navy confidence in its own operational environment. And the longer those boats stayed hidden, the more powerful that demonstration became. March 4th, 2026, 22:15 local time. The breakthrough came not from a sonobuoy or a sonar pulse, but from a magnetic anomaly detector. An MH-60R Seahawk from Helicopter Maritime Strike Squadron 72, operating off the destroyer USS Laboon, was running a search pattern 8 nautical miles south of Abu Musa Island. The water depth was 38 meters. The bottom was soft mud and sand. The helicopter was flying at 200 feet, towing its AN/ASQ-81 magnetic anomaly detector, a sensor that detects the distortion a submarine's steel hull creates in the Earth's magnetic field. MAD is an old technology. It was first used operationally in World War II. Its range is severely limited. Reliable detections typically occur at distances roughly equivalent to the submarine's length, meaning hundreds of feet rather than miles. It requires the aircraft to fly almost directly over the submarine. It is considered a prosecution tool, used to confirm a contact already localized by other means, not a primary search sensor. But when every other sensor is defeated by the environment, sometimes you go back to basics. At 22:17, the MAD trace spiked. The operator, a second-class petty officer with 4 years of ASW experience, recognized the signature immediately. A ferromagnetic anomaly consistent with a submarine hull on the bottom. The helicopter marked the position with a GPS waypoint and circled back for a confirmation pass. At 22:19, the second pass confirmed the anomaly at the same location. The contact was designated Goblin 1. Within minutes, the Seahawk deployed an AN/SSQ-62 diecast active sonobuoy directly over the contact. The active ping returned a hard echo at 36 meters depth on the bottom. The echo characteristics, size, reflectivity, shape, were consistent with a Ghadir-class submarine resting on the seabed. Admiral Rhodes was notified within 20 minutes. The reaction at 5th Fleet Headquarters was not celebration. It was calculation. 1 found, 4 to go, and now they had a pattern. Abu Musa Island, Iranian-controlled since 1971, strategically positioned in the Central Gulf, directly astride the shipping lanes used by tankers transiting to and from Gulf oil terminals. If one submarine was bottomed near Abu Musa, logic suggested others might be nearby. Rhodes redirected 3 additional MH-60R helicopters to the Abu Musa search zone. She also ordered the P-8A Poseidons to shift their sonobuoy patterns to cover a 30 nautical mile radius around the island. with particular attention to the shallow approaches from the south and east. The decision carried risk. Pulling ASW assets toward Abu Musa meant thinning coverage elsewhere. If any of the missing submarines were positioned near the strait or near the UAE coast, they would have less surveillance coverage. But the MAD detection had provided the first real lead in 48 hours. Admiral Rhodes made the call. Concentrate on Abu Musa, March 5, 2026. The second and third contacts came within hours of each other. At 2:40, a P-8A sonobuoy field east of Abu Musa detected a transient acoustic event. A brief low-frequency pulse lasting less than 2 seconds. The acoustic analysts aboard the P-8A classified it as a submarine hull popping, the sound a pressure hull makes when thermal changes cause minor flexion in the steel plates. It is one of the few involuntary noises a bottomed submarine produces, and it is nearly impossible to suppress. The sonobuoy localized the source to a 1 square mile area. An MH-60R was vectored in for MAD prosecution. At 0311, the MAD trace confirmed a second submarine on the bottom, 7 nautical miles east-southeast of Goblin 1, designated Goblin 2. Active sonobuoy confirmed a hard echo at 41 meters depth. At 0655, a third MAD detection was made 4 nautical miles north of Goblin 1, in water only 33 meters deep. Goblin 3. This contact was assessed as a Fateh-class boat based on the size of the magnetic anomaly, significantly larger than the Ghadir-class detections. 3 submarines, all sitting on the bottom, all within an 11 nautical mile triangle south and east of Abu Musa Island, all positioned to command the shipping lanes with torpedo fire, all completely silent. The tactical implications were stark. If these 3 boats had fired torpedoes simultaneously at passing tanker traffic without warning, the first indication of attack would have been explosions. No detection, no warning, no time to react. 3 submarines, each carrying between 2 and 4 torpedoes, could have struck 6 to 12 ships in a coordinated salvo before any ASW platform could respond. This was not a patrol. This was an ambush position, a Soviet-era tactic called the Wolfpack's bed, submarines lying in wait on the bottom along a known enemy transit route, engines cold, waiting for orders to attack. Iran had never demonstrated this capability before, not in exercises, not in intelligence assessments. The IRIN had studied Soviet doctrine clearly, but no one in the U.S. intelligence community had predicted they could execute it. That intelligence failure alone would trigger a classified review at ONI that continued for weeks after the crisis ended. Subscribe if you want to understand the naval confrontations that never make the evening news. These are the operations that shape the balance of power, silently, underwater, and more often than you think. But 3 submarines found still meant 2 were missing. Goblin 4 and Goblin 5, somewhere in the Gulf or the Gulf of Oman. 2 boats that the entire ASW apparatus of the United States Navy could not find. The search continued for 48 more hours. Every available asset was deployed. P-8As flew round-the-clock missions. Seahawk helicopters rotated in 4-hour cycles, dipping sonar in a systematic grid expanding outward from the Abu Musa cluster. The Virginia-class in the Strait maintained its acoustic barrier, listening for any submarine movement through the choke point. On March 6th, a false alarm nearly escalated the situation dangerously. An active sonobuoy off the coast of Fujairah, UAE, returned an echo that was classified as a possible submarine at 28 meters depth. The destroyer USS Carney, operating nearby, went to general quarters and launched its helicopter for prosecution. After 4 hours of active search, the contact was reclassified as a large metallic debris field, likely a sunken dhow or barge. The bottom of the Persian Gulf is littered with wrecks, pipelines, and discarded industrial material. Each one is a potential false target. That false alarm consumed 4 hours of search time from a Seahawk that could have been covering open water. It consumed the attention of the entire CIC aboard the Carney, and it reminded every operator in theater that in the Persian Gulf, the ocean itself fights against you. By the evening of March 7th, 96 hours after the intelligence gap was identified, CENTCOM made a decision. The search for the remaining 2 submarines would continue, but it would revert to normal surveillance posture. The emergency ASW surge could not be sustained indefinitely. Aircraft needed maintenance, crews needed rest. Sonobuoy stocks were becoming a concern. The Navy had expended over 1,200 sonobuoys in 4 days, depleting reserves that would take weeks to replenish from continental U.S. stocks. The 3 submarines found near Abu Musa remained under constant surveillance. They had not moved. CENTCOM communicated through diplomatic back channels via Oman that the United States was aware of the submarine positions and expected Iran to recall them. The message was deliberately ambiguous. It told Iran that its boats had been found without specifying how many the U.S. had located. Iran did not respond for 36 hours. When it did, the response came not through diplomatic channels, but through action. On March 9th, the 3 Abu Musa submarines surfaced within a 2-hour window, ran their diesels, and began transiting back toward Bandar Abbas on the surface, visible to every satellite and patrol aircraft in theater. The message was clear. We were there. We chose to leave. You did not make us. The 2 unlocated submarines were never conclusively found during the search window. NSA analysts continued monitoring Iranian naval communications for weeks afterward. Fragmentary intercepts suggested the 2 missing boats may have returned to Jask rather than Bandar Abbas, arriving after the formal search was downgraded. If true, they traversed the Gulf of Oman undetected for the duration of the crisis, passing within potential torpedo range of multiple U.S. and Allied naval vessels. One classified assessment, cited by sources familiar with the post-crisis review, estimated that at least one of the missing submarines, believed to be a Ghadar class, had been positioned in the approaches to the port of Fujairah, where U.S. Navy logistics ships regularly anchor for replenishment. If that assessment is accurate, an Iranian submarine maintained an undetected firing position on American support vessels for approximately 4 days. The carrier transits were eventually completed. The USS Harry S. Truman entered the Gulf on March 12th, escorted by an ASW screen roughly 3 times the normal size. The USS Eisenhower departed the Gulf on March 14th under similar reinforced escort. Both transits occurred without incident, but they occurred on a timeline dictated by the time it took to find 3 of the 5 missing submarines. Iran's submarine deployment had delayed American carrier movements by 9 days. 9 days. No shots fired. No missiles launched. No casualties. And yet Iran had demonstrated the ability to paralyze the operational tempo of the most powerful navy in human history inside its own area of operations. The consequences unfolded across multiple dimensions. Operationally, CENTCOM issued a revised ASW operational directive within 2 weeks. The directive tripled the mandated sonobuoy coverage density in the Persian Gulf and required continuous MAD patrol coverage over identified ambush positions near Abu Musa, the Tunbi Islands, and the Strait approaches. The additional surveillance requirements strained an already stretched maritime patrol force. The intelligence community conducted a classified failure analysis. The DIA report on Jask's submarine infrastructure, the one filed 7 months earlier and not incorporated into patrol plans, became a central exhibit. The analyst who wrote it was quietly commended. The process that failed to flag the report for operational integration was quietly redesigned. At the Pentagon, the incident accelerated a procurement request that had been languishing for 2 years. An unmanned underwater vehicle program designed specifically for shallow water submarine detection in contested environments. The program had been a budget line item. After the Abu Musa incident, it became a priority. Diplomatically, The incident was never publicly acknowledged by either side. Iran made no statements about its submarine deployment. The United States made no public reference to the ASW hunt or the carrier transit delays. But within the classified channels of Gulf security, every allied navy took notice. The Royal Navy, which maintains a permanent presence in Bahrain, quietly increased its own ASW patrols. The French Naval Command at Abu Dhabi requested additional sonobuoy supplies from Paris. And in Tehran, the IRIN celebrated quietly. They had put 14 submarines to sea. They had tied the U.S. Navy in knots for the better part of 2 weeks. They had demonstrated a bottoming tactic that no Western intelligence assessment had credited them with. And 2 of their boats had operated in hostile waters for the duration of the crisis without ever being found. For a Navy that spends a fraction of 1% of the U.S. defense budget, that was a strategic victory measured not in tonnage sunk, but in uncertainty created. There is a concept in naval warfare called sea denial. It does not require you to control the ocean. It does not require a fleet that can match the enemy ship for ship. It requires only the ability to make the enemy doubt whether its ships are safe, to inject uncertainty into every transit, every patrol, every carrier movement. To make the adversary spend billions of dollars and thousands of man-hours searching for threats that may or may not be there. Iran did not sink a ship. Iran did not fire a torpedo. Iran did not violate any international law. What Iran did was prove that in the shallow, warm, noisy waters of the Persian Gulf, a force of small, cheap, quiet submarines can render the world's most sophisticated anti-submarine warfare systems functionally uncertain. Not blind, not defeated, uncertain. And in war, uncertainty is a weapon as lethal as any torpedo. The 2 submarines that were never found represent something more than an intelligence gap. They represent a question that the U.S. Navy still cannot answer with confidence. If Iran can put 14 boats to sea and hide 5, what happens when they put 30 boats to sea? Iran's submarine construction program continues. New Fateh-class hulls are under construction at the Isoiko shipyard in Bandar Abbas. Gadir production has accelerated. Some estimates suggest Iran could field 25 operational submarines by the end of the decade. The Persian Gulf is not getting any deeper. The shipping lanes are not getting any quieter. And the laws of physics that make shallow water ASW the hardest problem in naval warfare are not changing. On the floor of the Persian Gulf, somewhere south of Abu Musa Island, there are depressions in the soft sediment where 3 Iranian submarines rested for days. The mud has likely filled those marks in by now. The physical evidence is gone. But the tactical evidence remains in every revised patrol plan, every increased sonobuoy budget, every sleepless night spent by ASW operators staring at sonar displays filled with noise, searching for silence.